Please put your hands together for Tim Bern from Disco. Kia ora.
So you've heard a lot about licensing and the word licensing today, and I thought it might be helpful to also just clarify what that means. And just before that, real fast, I've come from working in this company in the States called Disco with a lot of music industry and media industry companies. So I helped launch it and go into like Netflix and HBO and Disney and Universal and Warner, and essentially help these companies shift how they're doing like managing their music files and just sending them around the industry from the rights holder perspective, that's record labels and music publishers and sync agents, and then the side of like the film and screen and ad industry that's looking for and licensing music. So I've got this been in this interesting position of working across all those parts of the music industry and being able to work very closely with these people that is their full-time job every single day to be trying to make music match into film and TV, whether they're the ones on the TV and film side looking or the people pitching to try and get their music into the film and TV. So that's what I kind of want to talk about today, and hopefully it'll be helpful. So music supervision specifically, it barely exists in New Zealand as a thing. There's about 1,000 music supervisors that are on Disco using it, and they do the majority of this job, which is working for the production that's making the film, the ad, the video game, the thing with moving pictures that needs music, and they manage everything about music for the production. That could be looking for and hiring a composer, working out the music budget, which we'll look at in a second, and making sure that the music fits the budget, but that there is a budget for music as well. And then how do you have to shift all of the creative decisions that you're making to work with the budget? And a big thing about the music supervision job is ideally they come in at the very beginning of the production before anything starts, and you're going to be way better set up to end up with better music options in the production. So that's kind of the overview of their job, is work out the needs of the music with the director and the creative needs, work out the costs of all those bits of music, and then go out and find it and suggest it, and then ultimately license it and get permission to use it. And so on that term, license, there's driver's licenses, and it's about the permission. You have to obey rules you get this license to do this thing, drive a car, if you obey the rules of the law. And then there's food and liquor licenses, and you're allowed to sell liquor if you obey the rules of the law under specific terms. And then in music, we've got all sorts of different kinds of licenses. And they've been talking about performance licenses and sync licenses, and there's also mechanical licenses, and they all have different purposes and meanings. It's not all the same thing. There's not just one music license. So it's the specific application of how is the music going to be used, and then that's going to dictate how much it's going to cost, and how money's going to be transferred in the future. So is there anything about just because we may not have had the chance to ask, but is there anything about the word license and licensing that anyone needs clarification with?
I'd just like to clarify something around the broadcast license. So who incurs the broadcast license when it comes to screen? Is it just the broadcaster?
Yeah, a broadcast license, the reason that they are paying this money, like the radio station or the cinema or the TV station, is because they make money from selling ads. And so they need to pass some of that money through to the music in the productions that keep people watching their TV show or listening to their radio station so that those people will then listen to the ads and buy the things that the ad agency and ad people are trying to sell. So all the money that is generated through advertising essentially, or some kind of, they've got a revenue model as a broadcaster, and so that's why they are responsible for paying the performance or broadcast license for the music, because they are winning from the music being played on their network. And back to this, the sync license side is just between the production. And a lot of productions are worried that they are going to have to pay the performance licenses or the broadcast license or the back-end money is another, like those ongoing royalties that happen that are because of every time we hit play on that thing on the radio or on the TV show, that generates another performance royalty way into the future. Everyone uses the Friends theme song as an example. The people that wrote that song make lots and lots of money all the time still. But they got paid at the very, very beginning one sync license fee when they did the deal in the first place, which is, hey, right, can we use this song for this TV show? And that was the initial sync license. But we're getting all over.
No, got you. Was that helpful? Yeah, just an extra point. Any other questions on license? Because, yeah, you're right. Sometimes we throw around these terms and assume that we all know what we're talking about, but you've just explained some of the different versions. And then in terms of music supervision, is this sort of like a showrunner? Is this sort of like a new role, or has it always been?
No, yeah. So music supervision's been around pretty much since there was film, any kind of moving pictures, and they needed to put music in it. And originally, you had film didn't have sound, and so the music was played live along with the film in the theatre. So there was a musician that was making money to play that gig. And then eventually they figured out how to add the music along with the film, and that's when the synchronization idea was developed. And prior to synchronizing, which is a use of IP, I had all these things I was going to talk about. Intellectual property is actually the core of this, and that you own a car and you own your clothes and you own your house, or you don't own your house but you're paying someone else who owns the house. Those are all items of property, and when you write something or use your brain to create something, you're creating property. Oh look, it's magically, something's happened here. Oh, you're bringing up that. Okay, cool.
So that's not actually the slides,
no,
though. This is your disco for reference, though.
Yeah, so intellectual property is the basis of how all of the money in the entire music industry, it's why there's any money in the first place. The entire revenue stream of all music is essentially based off the fact that you create intellectual property and it's protected by the law, the copyright law, and the right to literally copy it. So a performance is a copy of a song. You've created another version of it. When you record it, you're copying it. When you duplicate the CD that you recorded, that's a copy. So if you sell it, then it has to pay money to the person who made it in the first place. When it's played on the radio, that's a copy. Even though it's the CD being played on the radio, that's a copy of the recording that's been recorded, as well as a copy of the song of the behind the recording. So that's your two things that are being generated when the song's played on the radio and in every other use case. So, music supervision.
Do you want to give it another shot to link?
The music supervisor was around when they started putting music into film. And earlier it was all mostly composed and scored music. And then it started becoming more popular to use existing songs. And that's more when the idea of synchronizing and doing a license with a right holder or a record label or a publisher came about. And we want to use that hit song. All right, let's see if it sustains.
Cool, yep, we're seeing it all.
Yeah, that's the quick hi, that's me. That's like who disco, those are some of the, like a very small handful of companies that I've been involved with disco, blah, 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 blah. Some definitions. So the synchronization, that's syncing music to moving pictures. A license is the legal document that allows you to do that in the first place. Then there's the performance or broadcast license from the performance of the music. And the music supervision is the role of finding and licensing the music. Rights holders are people that own music, record labels, music publishers. If you don't have that and you're a musician, you are the right holder. And then there's people that represent these rights as well. Okay, so let's talk about what actually makes a good music supervisor. So there's only a couple in New Zealand, and it's really hard to get into it because there's no industry of music supervision for you to kind of become an intern and work your way through. Whereas in LA, where there's hundreds of music supervisors, and there's all these universities that have programs, and you can learn how to be a music supervisor doing that, and then at summer school you go out or during the summer you intern at these different, music and film corporations and learn how to do this job by following. So everyone here that's in producing film or TV, you're all probably doing a bit of music supervision just by default, but to do it really well is really, really hard because you need to have an insane knowledge of music and music history and sort of what's out there, and then what's constantly coming out, what's the latest music. But that's actually only a tiny, tiny part of what a music supervisor does and needs to be able to do. So music knowledge is kind of a given. They obviously need a passion for putting music into screen and how it tells stories and enhances the story. And the difference between average or bad music that doesn't really have anything to do with or fit a scene versus the perfect song for a scene is just such a stark difference. Or a completely different song versus another in a scene also has a completely different effect. So, but we'll get to that stuff in a minute. They all have a music collection, and this is sort of where disco came in. It was built for music supervisors, by music supervisors at the beginning. I was working for the company as a music supervisor, and we made disco to manage all of our music. There were like 5-6 people working at the company. We all had different iTunes libraries with tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of tracks. And then we kept losing all of our music because, we'd trip over the hard drive. iTunes would update all these issues.
The cord wasn't sitting in the right place,
The cord, yeah. And then we would have to upload songs and send them to ad agencies we were working with using Dropbox. So Disco solved that. We put all the music into the platform so we could build playlists and send them to the ad agencies we were working with. But as a music supervisor, you are collecting music constantly. And you're being sent music by every single record label and music publisher and sync agent in the universe because everyone wants to get syncs. It's like this sort of magical income stream that is out there, but it's extremely hard to get syncs, and I think that there's a lot of people get hyped into, I'm going to get into sync and I'm going to make all this money doing it. If you get one sync in your entire life, you're already a million miles ahead of 99.9% of the rest of every musician that ever lived. So there's a lot of odds involved in getting syncs, but you can also work your music a specific way and build your career into sync, but it just takes years, so just be prepared for that path. Let's see.
Is there like a Hans Zimmer guy and he just gets all of them? Or how does it work? There's just some people who get all of the gigs?
Basically, yeah, essentially, and even in New Zealand, there's probably 4 or 5 composers that do almost all of the music in every film and
it's
TV
you, Joel,
show.
Isn't it?
He's the 6th. And it's the same with everything. All industries are stacked in the same way. Like all of the money in the music industry starts with, the major companies because they own all of the back catalogue of all of the world's music, which is the most popular music and is demanded the most for different opportunities. So, and then the most popular musicians get played on the radio because they're popular, and that sells ads for radio stations, and that's why they play the songs. And it's this self-perpetuating cycle. But that's sort of the top layer of the industry, and then there's a ton of space to get in there if you're figuring out your career, but it's about what's your hustle, what are you doing every day to get the job,
And none of that is being disrupted by new technology, by TikTok or anything?
I think that every musician has the ability to create the career that they want, but they have to get out the door and go after it, more so than a TikTok's ever going to help you, I think. I mean, that's all luck again, and it's numbers. So if you go viral, but that's just, no one should be depending on that, because it's just sitting at home and waiting for the lotto to tick over.
Yeah, I'll record that and send it to someone I'm related to. Okay, cool.
Lastly, music supervisors, where they're so valuable is that they understand the value of music in the context that it needs to be used, and therefore they're good at negotiating, and they know how they can negotiate to get the right deal. They're also best mates with all of the rights holders. They hang out at bars all the time, all day and all night, and everything in between, and they're just friends. And they're helping each other out. It's an ecosystem of, hey, I really need to find this thing last minute. Have you got any tracks like X? We really don't have a lot of money for this. And you're like, yeah, cool. Because they're doing hundreds of deals every month with the same people, that it's this constant back and forth of, here's $5,000 here, but there's the $50,000 thing coming around the corner later. I'm going to help you because you just hooked me up. So it's also all about relationships. Mostly it's about relationships. Then it's about extremely good music. And then everything else follows. So if you break into the sort of music sync world, especially say in LA, where it is so, I mean, heaps of them are leaving now, and the whole scene is in a bit of a mess, but it is an entire industry, and it's hard to kind of see it from New Zealand just because we're so far away and it is so small, but we can work towards doing a bit more of what they do over there.
Is it an opportunity because they're leaving, and are they leaving because of...
They're like leaving the city, because there's less work, and there's, there've been strikes, there's government and politics, and less money's being spent. But it just, the money
same,
just
same
goes,
everywhere, right?
Yeah, but the money just goes somewhere else. So you just have to go and look, where is it going, and how do I go with it? And they're obsessed with spreadsheets because they spend a lot of time in spreadsheets. So a bit of their time is spent listening to music and finding music, and then a lot of their time is dealing with a lot of different people and what all those people want, and then a lot of their time is administrating and making sure they're keeping track of things in spreadsheets. Oh my God, the time. Okay, so what's the process of music supervision? And like I said, you need to start with music supervision at the very beginning. So if you don't have a music supervisor, or you don't think you can afford a music supervisor, you might actually find out that if you finish your entire film or whatever you're working on, and then you get to the end and you look back at actually how you spent your money on music, you probably could have afforded a music supervisor, and they would have got you better music, and the whole thing would have come in under budget, or at least on budget, instead of being this crazy roller coaster ride at the end of the production being like, oh crap, we need music. So the big takeaway, just to start, is you have to start with the music at the very beginning, just like everything else in the production. And that starts with analyzing the script. It's the most simple thing to do, and find and point out every single place where there might be music for any purpose. And you just write a big long list. Which scenes require music? What role does the music play in the scene? How's it going to help that tell the story? And then what is the type of use? Is it a featured use? Is it like some crazy cinematic thing where they're driving through a desert and it's this big vibe? Is it just background music in a bar or on a TV that's playing in the background? Is it a performance in the show by an actor? That is the most complicated thing to deal with, because you need to pre-clear the music, you need to pre-record the music, and then you have to perform it on the scene, and maybe that person's not a musician or a performer, and that's really complex and needs to be planned way in advance, because sometimes people just go and they record the thing and it's like, oh, you can't clear that song, so that scene's a waste. Is it just score that's being composed that's throughout the whole film, or is there a theme that goes with that character that's going to be repeating over and over again? So that use of music is important. If we figure that out at the beginning, we're going to need some kind of thing that goes with this person when they walk in the room every time. And then there's obviously opening and closing titles. So once you've analysed your script and you've written all that out, there's the places you might go to get the music, which are typically going to be production music libraries, which are the least expensive places to go to get music and potentially the least creative and interesting places to go to get the music, but it's fast and easy. And that's what a lot of people end up with, because it's at the very end in this desperation and we just need something. But that's crazy. And I guess you can look at this another way. A lot of musicians spend years recording and making their music and making their album, and they spend 5 minutes figuring out the artwork for their album and 10 minutes promoting it. But they spend an entire year writing and recording. So if they spent 1% of the time on marketing their music that they spent recording and writing the music, they could potentially be enormously more successful. And then in a film and screen context, the amount of time you write the script and work with all the aspects of making a production, if there's a bit more energy in music, the outcome could be much greater. If you plan in advance, you can figure out which one of these different places you might have to go for the music, and then in each of those cases, what is the creative direction the music could take? So does it need to be a classic hit that has this nostalgic vibe? That's the most expensive option. But it's got to be that track from 1972, and that's just what it has to be. And you've just spent 50% of your entire music budget. So there's this, okay, well, could it be a cool band that's local, that's doing really interesting things? That's the part that I would like everybody to really think about, especially in New Zealand. Why are we using so much music from overseas, even from production libraries overseas, when we could or should be using local music? And then there's using composed music and using background music. So that gets us to the budget. So we've gone through, we've made this big old list of every possible use of music in each scene, and then we've said what's the use of that music and purpose, and then that creative part. Is it going to be, does it have to be a hit? Could it be composed? Could it be a cool band that's not going to be too expensive? And you put that in a spreadsheet. Another part of it is that you have to figure out what are the needs of the license. Is this going to be only in film festivals in New Zealand? Or is it going to be in film festivals around the world? Or is it, magic, is it going to be, a massive worldwide release in theatres, or is it just on Netflix? So that's all going to help you figure out the cost of each music use. And when you go to the rights holder to clear the music, you have to tell them this information. And the music supervisor who you've hired, they're not going to be able to do their job until you know that. So if you're the producer creating the film, you have to get that done really early on. And I'm sure that's the distribution models has to be worked out early. So you've listed all of those things in a spreadsheet, and then whether it's production library music or composed or whatever, you can start applying numbers to it. You get to the bottom of your spreadsheet and you're going to have a number. $5,000, $500,000, whatever that number is, then go to the total budget of your thing. Is it $1 million? Is it $10 million? And what is the percentage of music to that? 1%, 3%? In America, 5 to 10% of the entire budget is for music usually. In New Zealand, and so I'm good friends with Armine. In fact, she was the first music supervisor I showed disco to in 2015. And she talks about this all the time because she's worked for 20 years in the States as a music supervisor, and then she's been working on stuff here, and this big difference between the approach to music in screen and there isn't even a budget at the beginning. No one's even thought about the music as sort of this crazy shock to her and every other music supervisor that's involved. So where does your music budget fall? And if it's 1%, then maybe you're not spending enough money on music, and ideally there's something more to be done there. Great example from Teresa. When there was analysis of a budget, the budget was $65,000 for music, and then when it was properly analysed, it should have been $250,000, which was just like, these are the things that you've said you need for the music, and that will cost $250,000. And they just sort of thrown the number $65,000 out there, I think, is how much was going to be spent on music. So there's sort of the hard reality of, well, you need this, it has to cost that. You can know this at the beginning. It doesn't have to be a surprise after you've shot the film. Thoughts and questions about all of this stuff so far?
Can you sign up as an independent artist, and does it make it harder to be seen and discovered?
Yeah, so Disco, tons of independent artists use Disco. First and foremost, you'd think of it as a replacement for the way you use Dropbox or some file management system where you're just storing your music. That's the most basic use for it. But it's just made for the music industry. So Dropbox, which is just a folder, this is a much more comprehensive thing with data and playback and search and playlisting. When you put your music into a Disco account, it's not discoverable to the rest of the world, though. That's one of the most confusing things about this. It's initially just a tool for you to store and manage your music. And when you want to share it, you make a playlist and you share that with the person you're sharing it with. Then they have access to it. And music supervisors and everyone else that's using it, again, they're just putting their music into it, and it's their music, it's their workflow platform for sending music around to people for different reasons, and even just keeping track of it. So all your unreleased music, how are you storing your unreleased tracks and sharing them with your band? Disco is just a use case for that.
But you would think for perception it would seem good if you have Disco and you're working with a music supervisor and you can send them that. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. So because music supervisors work in Disco all day, if you send them a Disco playlist, you're sort of speaking their language, and you're making it very easy for them to listen to your tracks, save them to their Disco without having to spend time downloading them and then re-uploading them. You can add a whole lot of data to the tracks. So this is what Disco looks like inside. And this is not about me trying to pitch Disco. I'm just trying to show you the way that it's used by the industry and sort of what's going on in there. Like, this is a playlist for an album. It's got some tracks in it that we could be listening to if we wanted to. There's data, which is really important. So the information that you are storing with your files, what are the copyrights in this? You can put it in the comments. 100% of the publishing is me, 100% of the master recording is somebody else. But this other information, if you send this to somebody, to a music supervisor, oh cool, there's a nice photo of the artist or their album art, and all this information that they're going to need if they're going to license this music from you in the future. Your contact information being literally the most important thing here. Because if you send your music out to music supervisors and it doesn't have your contact information on it, they definitely do not need your music when you first send it to them. They will come back a year or two later when they randomly find your song when they're searching their Disco, because they've got hundreds of thousands of tracks in there. Oh yeah, that's right, that song's really good, and that's perfect for what I need today. I'll just hit up that person. Where's their email address in the metadata? But if it isn't there, you've just missed out on the opportunity, or they have to do a whole lot of hunting down to find you. So that's just, we're storing the files, we're storing data, and then we're just quickly sharing things if we want to. I'll just show you this. So then you can send a page like that. So this is like an EP. I've got the story of that person. So this is more of an artist use case. The music supervisor has received this page. They can play the tracks, they can look at some information, they can download different versions of the track. You can keep your photos and videos and documents and everything and send those. I love the colors that are going across the screen. And so from a music supervisor perspective, so you can think of it like they have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of tracks that they've been collecting over the years. Every week they're sent all of the new releases by record labels and publishers and other kinds of people like that. And then they're saving that to their Disco account, which they can search and pull up tracks at some point in the future. I need rock, just to be extremely boring. against a rock. Some tracks come up, and then there's this ecosystem aspect to disco. So you can create, and it's a sort of an add-on part of disco, you can create a catalogue of tracks that can be made available for music supervisors to find. So everything on this bottom half of the screen that says more tracks from across disco, those are tracks from other disco accounts, record labels, publishers, what have you, that are showing up in this search. So this is a way that you could randomly be discovered on disco if you've put your music in, but in a disco catalogue, which is a separate additional thing to just your base disco. There's also a whole ecosystem of these catalogues. Oops. So this is what music supervisors can access, where they can see catalogues from other companies. So I can go to Sony Publishing or Future Classic, Believe, Red Bull Records, Mushroom. These are all Sun Records. And then I can click into those catalogues and search them. So if you're looking for music and you're on the production side and you aren't a music supervisor, and you don't know where to go to look for music, you could start a disco account and you tell, when you're doing that, you say, hey, we're doing music supervision here, we're producing a film or something. So therefore you'd get a music supervision account, which gives you access to find music here. Which kind of gets me, what's the time, by the way, because are we running out?
4:17, about 50. Oh, yeah.
I'll give you a last little point and then we can do some more questions. So you've done your budget analysis, and then you need to go out and find the music. So here's a place that music supervisors can go to find music. What they mostly do is send out briefs. So they send a creative brief that describes a use for a specific scene, and they send it to their favorite record labels and sync agents and publishers and production music libraries, depending on what the use is. And then all those people start sending them back lists of music, which they go through and they choose things that fit the scene the best, and then they give that to the director or the editor to try against the pictures. So they might try 5 different tracks in that scene and see what works, what doesn't work, and then ultimately a decision is made about which track they want, and they go back and get confirmation that they can actually use it for the budget. And that then takes you into the licensing process, which is a lot of administration and keeping track of numbers and paperwork. So when you're thinking about looking for music, let's just go back to, I made these slides kind of last minute. So the sort of sources of music, the places you can go to find it. There are your major labels, Universal, Sony, Warner, and then they all have their publishing entities. So music publishing, just in case you aren't aware, they manage the song side of the industry. It started with printing music, publishing sheet music. And so before there was recording technology. And then the publishers kept figuring out how to make money from songs, which were originally just bits of paper that were being played. And then, so there's the major publishers and the major labels. They are the most expensive people to deal with. Usually really big songs have got lots of different writers involved in writing the songs, and the music just gets more popular, therefore it gets more expensive to license. Then you've got the entire independent label and publisher world, which is, still people, those companies are run by people that are in the industry, and they want to help independent artists to go, take it to the next level. There's not that many independent labels in New Zealand. There's hardly any publishers, and music publishing is even a funny thing in New Zealand because of the potential for it, if you're just focused in New Zealand, is very narrow. Those in the indie label and publisher world, often, if they're just a really small entity, like I could start a record label and it's just me. And really my job is finding really good talent and then doing a deal with it saying, hey, you're so good, I want to help you grow your career, and then I'm going to pay to record this thing and then start paying to promote it and work with you to promote your music. But I can't also pitch for sync opportunities. I'm not doing the press. I'm not doing radio. So I hire those things out. So that's when they'll bring a sync agent on board. And sync agents either work for just direct relationships with artists. They've signed an artist to represent their music for sync, or they represent an entire indie label. There's a bunch of companies in the States, Terrorbird, Bank Robbers, Zinc, Greater Goods, and they represent a lot of the independent labels. And as a sync agent, their entire business revolves around relationships with music supervisors and pitching music directly to them. And that's where you get that real tight-knit community of friendship. And so sync agents are extremely efficient. They really care about all of the data on the tracks, and they prepare everything really well. So if you're a production and you're making film and you're looking for music, sync agents are the best place to go looking for music, because they're going to be able to really deliver what you need quickly, and it will be very on brief. If you go to majors, they often just send you whatever's the priority that week, which is coming out, and it's not necessarily got anything to do with what you need creatively. And then there's just going directly to the artists, and I really love that artist. I'm going to hit them up on Spotify or on Instagram or Facebook or something and try and get in touch with them. As artists, put your email address somewhere where it's really easy to find. And usually people's Facebook about page is a place that is the most obvious place to find, or you get direct messaged on Instagram. But make it easy. On your website, don't have a form that's a contact form. Put your email address. No one's going to spam you. I don't know why, but it's completely insane from the music supervision standpoint how difficult it is to get in touch with artists sometimes. It's like you do not want to make any money. And I'm a jazz musician, right? So I know all about not making money from music. But so, I'm not
in the end
trying
you
to
do,
be
I'm
fancy,
sure.
Eventually you do. But yeah, make it easy. And then when you get a sync opportunity, talk to APRA or anyone you know that's sort of in the industry that has an idea, and just get their advice on the terms of the license. And you should not be giving away the ownership of your music. That's just licensing it for a specific term, and it's never an exclusive use either. You can relicense that same song forevermore into anything else. It's never, they have that forever now. But the direct relationship with artists is a thing, but for music supervisors, they're being hit up by so many people. It is really difficult as an artist to build direct relationships. Even though they do like having those relationships, it's really hard to maintain and break in. And the best thing to do is to try and go out and meet them physically in person, all two or three of them. And those conversations usually lead to something, because they really want to use independent music as much as possible and help artists, especially if they like you. They're like, I really want to help Nick to get a sync. But I think we'll just go to questions.
Yeah. Any questions that are coming up in people's minds? I'll just repeat that for online. So when you talk about expense for a major label as compared to, say, a New Zealand label, what sort of expense are we talking? She's wanting numbers here.
Yeah, everyone always tries to avoid this, but I'll just tell you guys generally. It is all completely dependent on the terms, and I'll speak from ads, which is an easier thing to think about. In an ad, if it's a big major song that's well known, it's going to be at least $150,000, $200,000, $250,000, $300,000 for the license for 1 year, all TV, New Zealand only, and other media, like online and stuff. That's kind of a general idea. It could be $500,000 or $600,000, or if you're really, 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 really lucky as the music supervisor, like $100,000 per side. So that's $100,000 for the publishing, $100,000 for the master. Now, if it's a massive song, but it's recorded by an independent artist, then the publishing will be really, really expensive because it's a huge famous song, but you can get the recording for much, much less. And that's a lot of the time what they'll do. That's why covers are really good. If you're a great performer, make covers of big songs because you might get the license as well.
And then did we answer the part about a New Zealand artist? Like say it's a successful New Zealand song.
And so in that same circumstance, a well-known New Zealand artist is going to be more like $100,000, $70,000, $80,000, decently well-known. And then you might go down to like $40,000 or $50,000, but then there's like a big jump. So even for an indie artist that's just, and I haven't done this for a while, but if you are an indie artist and you've got an ad opportunity, you can do a beer ad or something, you should really be making at least like $40,000 or $50,000. If they're like, it's $20,000, you should really think about that because that song is never going to be used in another beer ad again. So once it's used in a specific, even though the license isn't exclusive, saying, they might say no other beer brands can use this song for like at least a year or two, might be specified in the license, but in general, no other beer brand will want to use the song because it's the DB track now. So
and who knows what other brands might go, that's already used for something else.
Yeah, if it's a composition specifically for the ad, then it's going to be $10,000 to $20,000 or so. And then if it's a production library song, it's going to be $2,000 to $5,000, but it might even be a little bit less. But it's all dependent on the specific terms of the license. Film and TV is completely different. The major label track might be $10,000 or $20,000. Usually labels aren't licensing stuff for less than like $8,000. But film and TV is way less expensive. And then it's different depending, is it HBO or is it a reality TV show? And so then the indie artist might be $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. So Cozy Music is a publishing and sync agency I helped set up in the States in 2019. And all day long we're doing licenses for like $3,000 to $6,000. And then you get a trailer which is $10,000 or $20,000. You might then get the ad which is your $80,000, $100,000, $200,000. But you're doing heaps of work in that $1,000 to $10,000 range. And it's all about volume. It's yes to everything. And because syncs beget syncs. The more you do, the more you get for some reason. But getting the first one's really hard.
Is it worth people learning how to compose for sync? Like say if you're already a creator and you're already usually writing songs, is it worth people trying to refine that art?
Absolutely. It's this really tricky thing about I'm being true to my artistic direction versus, can you keep your artistic integrity and make music that fits like a 30-second format? It's kind of take it as a challenge, But there's also genres and styles that fit better or work better for different kinds of syncs. Like in sports promos, it's big, heavy hip-hop tracks all day long, or big rock things. If you're like a soft sort of electro thing, it's probably not going to be in a sports promo. But, there's something for everything everywhere.
And then you come up with a White Lotus theme. Yeah. You're so made. Ka pai. Any last questions?
Right. So, in terms of how you get paid, I saw your line on the slide there. How does that work?
Like a music supervisor?
How does a music supervisor get paid?
Yeah, that ranges a lot. They get paid, so TV shows usually it's a per episode fee, and that I don't do that work, so I can't really speak to it, but it's a few $1,000s, maybe it's $10,000 an episode. If it's a film, it might be 50, 40, 50,000. And also supervisors themselves have got clout. Like you build up your career as the supervisor, the guy that does all of the Marvel movies, they make hundreds of thousands of dollars to do a movie. But if you're just getting started, you might make $5,000. So it's all about, getting in the door and then growing that. And then you'll get hired as a music supervisor because you might have a specialty in a specific vibe or sound, or you get known for this thing that you did. Same as being a musician, like you've got a vibe, so if you've got to stick to what you're really, really good at. Some people try to write every kind of music for every kind of thing, and it's all not good.
So in New Zealand, if we've got our budget.
Yeah, and that's the really tricky part, is the budgets obviously are a lot smaller here.
Yeah.
But there are, sometimes that supervisor is worth all of the money you've paid them, because they get you way better music for way better prices than you trying to go on. And often you might not even just ever get in touch with the rights holder for that thing that you wanted. So it's a balance. Yeah, film, TV, and then in ads, usually music supervisors either charge a flat rate to do the ad or a minimum, and like a search fee, $800 to do a search, and then if the license goes ahead, then it's like 5% of the license fee, and so if the budget's $100,000, then they'll charge $5,000 or whatever. So it's somewhere in that sort of general way of working.
Ka pai. So you can always see, like, is it worth it in terms of industry size or those kind of things, that there may be opportunity. It would sort of suggest that then the LA music supervisors aren't doing some things we are doing here, and you just need to, maybe with your help, make sure everyone here gets known, okay?
Done.
Done. We've got a deal, everybody. Congratulations. Thank you so much to Tim Bern. Kia ora.